Alright, so back again, Monday the 7th, so 3 days until the NFL season begins. Today we are doing team I like, so probably this will be the highest ranked team I have left. Should also note I did not rank my own team in these rankings when I did them, just because that would kind of throw it off. So just bear that in mind. There's going to be 13 videos, and then I might make a last video of my own team, but yeah, I'm basically ranking all these teams 1 through 13. So this team is my fourth team. I like the team overall. I do take issue with some of the things, but we'll get into that. So today is on Mac's team, so the number 4 team. This is video number 11? Yeah, so we're getting pretty close to being done. All right, so first round, 4th pick, Alvin Kamara. I very much like Alvin Kamara. He was the number 1 pick last year. Vivian's team obviously ended up winning a championship with him. He had a bit of an up and down year. He was injured late in the year with his ankle. He didn't have the same... Kamara's known for his quickness as well as his route running. He's incredibly quick. His acceleration is probably the best in the NFL. So once he had that injury, he couldn't get up to speed as quickly as previously. So I'm hopeful, obviously, that he's completely past that injury and he's gotten that same quickness back, because that is his number 1 trait, I would say. I believe he's going to get an extension with the Saints relatively soon. So I was never concerned about a holdout or anything like that. I think if he can stay healthy, obviously he will have a good season. He averaged 12 carries a game and 7 receptions a game, so almost 20 touches, almost one short, but that's still very good. You know, his yards per carry is still above 4.5. He had 81 catches for the 3rd straight season. So the only thing would be, you know, he didn't get as much usage near the goal line last year, but I'm thinking positive touchdown regression this year. So I could see him getting like 900 yards, maybe 11 touchdowns, because we're going to get some receiving and some rushing, and probably like 600, maybe even 700 yards receiving. So a 1,400 yard season from him. So he's a bona fide top 5 running back, relatively safe pick. Would I have made this pick at number 4? I don't know about that. I would probably take the upside somewhere else. Probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to be honest with you. But Alvin Kamara is a safe pick. He's been very good. We're mitigating risk. I think I'm going to take issue with how safe this team is again. So, yeah. No, I like Alvin Kamara. I like the selection. Don't love it, but I like it. So, second round, we had Devin Singletary. Now, I had Devin Singletary most of last year. He was a 7th round pick. He eventually overtook Frank Gore. Now, I like Devin Singletary quite a bit. He is a good rusher. He's very good in the open field. He is a pretty good pass catcher as well. There is some worry, though. I had him in my top 20 running backs to take, but I probably would not have taken him before the running back that was taken after him. I know Sarah wanted Devin Singletary, but I actually think David Montgomery was the safer selection. And the reason being is because while Singletary in the second half of the season without Frank Gore was getting 15 carries a game and 4 targets a game, so kind of like Alvin Kamara getting 19 touches a game, he only had 3 touchdowns. So you would say, well, wouldn't you expect positive touchdown regression? And that's kind of where we're getting to. So I think that Singletary will obviously lead the team in rushing yards. I think that Devin Singletary, he averaged 5.1 yards per carry, which was like 6th best in the NFL among running backs. But I am concerned because even though he's in a run-heavy offense, not only is Josh Allen a very good goal line quarterback, he's, as we call him, White Cam Newton, but I'm also concerned because Zach Moss was drafted as well by Buffalo to kind of take that Frank Gore role. And Zach Moss has looked very, very good at camp. In fact, so good that McDermott has talked openly about possibly not only them splitting carries, but Moss even overtaking Devin Singletary as the starting running back, and that Moss is already the goal line back for the team. So that is very concerning. Having less volume and having a player that, while I like as a talent, having to compete with another player who I also like as a talent is it's a concern. So I know Moss ended up going in the 5th round to Justin, but yeah, Moss has looked really, really good. He's very good at forcing tackles. They both are very good players, but Moss is more of the pound for pound. He's the bigger, not as agile player. A little bit more of a injury risk, but it's a concern. It's definitely a concern. I usually, if I want to be spending a 2nd round pick on a player, I want to be getting a lot of volume with them. That's why I probably would have veered more towards Montgomery, because even though Montgomery is not as talented, in my estimation, as Devin Singletary, he's the safer pick because there's no one really. I mean, they're starting Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback again, and there's no one else in that backfield. I mean, I guess Tariq Cohen's taking the pass-catching downs, but Montgomery still is going to get a lot of touches and has positive touchdown regression. I don't know if Singletary does, just because I don't know if he's going to get those carries. So it's a concern, but that isn't to say I don't like Singletary as a player. I feel like this was one of the better picks. I mean, like, there were some really rough picks in the 2nd round, like Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, Ronald Jones, as I've mentioned. So this isn't like the worst pick. I would just be cautious, because I think Singletary is not only in a timeshare, but it's possible he could lose said timeshare. They really seem to like Zach Moss just as much as they like Singletary. And Singletary does have a fumbling issue. And I usually do not like players with fumbling issues. Case in point, Chris Carson. So just something to keep an eye out on. It's a little rich for my blood, but I do like the player overall. So 3rd round, we took Mark Ingram the 2nd. So, as I've said before, I like volume vultures. Volume is king in the NFL and in fantasy football. And I think that Mark Ingram did his best to kind of push back against that. He had 1,018 yards. He had 15 touchdowns. So 1,018 yards rushing, 247 yards receiving, 15 touchdowns total. He had a very, very good season. And he was the number 11 fantasy running back last year in the high-powered, run-heavy Ravens offense with Lamar Jackson. So I know, like, Andre was looking specifically at him, and Andre ended up going with Jonathan Taylor. And other than 2018, Ingram has been a top 15 fantasy running back every single year. So why am I a little bit also concerned about Ingram? Well, because the Ravens, even though they really seem to like Mark Ingram, have talked about openly him splitting carries with a new rookie that they've taken as well, which is this time J.K. Dobbins. And Dobbins was taken in the 2nd round, but they had a 1st-round grade on him. And they've talked openly about Dobbins being the pass-catching back. So I have a difficult time seeing Ingram basically putting up the kind of stats that he put up last year, and I probably would have preferred one of the rookie running backs taken after him, rather than taking and paying full value for a season that I don't think he's going to have again. So while I like Ingram as, again, a player, he's an older running back competing with a lot of younger running backs, and specifically with a younger running back that the team drafted to replace him. So it's kind of like Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram all over again. And so I think, like, Ingram had 218 fantasy points last year, and I just have a difficult time kind of venturing out that far. I mean, it's obvious touchdown regression. So he had 15 last year. I'm thinking like 8. He had 1,000 yards rushing. I'm thinking like 700. He had like 250 yards receiving, so maybe like 150. So all of that is to say, while I like Mark Ingram, I do think he's going to have a tough time being a top 20 fantasy back, or even maybe a top 30, just because, again, while they like him, it is a run-heavy offense. He relied heavily on touchdowns last year, and I'm uncertain if he will get that kind of touchdown regression, especially considering they brought in someone specifically to replace him, and they very, very much like that player. So, again, this is kind of like we took a player, it's a relatively safe player, and I don't really like the situation that they're in. I like volume a lot, but I like upside as well, and I don't see a whole lot with Ingram. Singletary has upside, but it's a concern because the player that he's competing with has more. So these are difficult. These are difficult picks. I understand going 3 running back though, so we will continue on. So round 4, we took Latavius Murray. I assume we took him to be the handcuff to Alvin Kamara. Kamara was injured last year, and Murray had a relatively good season. And so when Kamara was hurt, Ingram had great weeks. He had in week 7 and 8, he had 307 yards and 4 touchdowns on like 60 touches. So like 30 touches in both of those games. So he was a top 5 running back in fantasy when Kamara is gone. And he's obviously an elite insurance option, but this also brings the question of how come we took Kamara if we're so afraid of Kamara getting hurt again. I mean, I understand protecting an asset and making sure we have the top 5 running back in fantasy, but we're also passing on any sort of elite talent at any other positions. I mean, this is now running back in the first 4 rounds, and I don't exactly love the situation for the last 3 running backs. So, again, I have this team as my number 4 team because I think this team obviously set themselves up to have a lot of safety netting, more so than probably any other team in the league. So they're very well insulated, which I like. And there is some upside on the back end, which we will get into. But the first 4 picks I'm very hesitant about. Like, if we knew that we would need Latavius Murray so badly we would take him in the 4th round to back up Alvin Kamara, then I probably wouldn't have taken Alvin Kamara in the 1st round because I don't want to use that kind of draft capital to get a handcuff. Tony Pollard's a really good handcuff. Tony Pollard didn't go for another 4 rounds. So, yes, Kamara's been hurt. Yes, having Latavius Murray is an elite option for him, but I don't like using this kind of draft capital to get a handcuff because that just shows you're concerned about the injury so much that you're expecting Murray to completely replace Kamara, and it's kind of like, I don't know, if Kamara gets hurt for the season, I mean, yeah, you have Murray, but is that team still going to be able to compete for a championship? I would argue no. So I am uncertain about this because we're using a 4th round pick on a player who's going to sit on my bench, I hope, for most of the season, and I don't really love that value at all. I think that's playing it super, super safe, and I'd rather either, go for some upside or go for a player who's going to contribute on the team. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, as I mentioned, with Mark Ingram, went in the 4th round as well. So, yeah, don't love it. I guess if we're going to put a projection on it, we'll put like 550 yards, 200 yards receiving, maybe 6 touchdowns, because I guess he gets some goal line work. And we're hoping Kamara stays healthy, but that means that Murray has essentially no value if that happens. So, yeah, I guess if you want an elite insurance policy, you have the number 1 elite insurance policy, but I don't really want the number 1 elite insurance policy. Instead of buying a Ferrari and paying $12,000 on the insurance, I'll just buy like a Porsche and pay like $5,000. It won't be as good. It may not be as fast, but it won't cost as much. So, yeah, I don't love that. I do like this though. So now we're going to get into the stuff that I like. So we need a wide receiver. We've taken 4 running backs. Obviously, we need some receivers, and it's good that this was the draft where receivers were falling, and we took some good ones. So we took Robert Woods, who is now the number 1 receiver for the Rams. Now, Brandon Cooks has been traded away to the Texans. They play on Thursday night. And Woods is now the number 1. Now, Jared Goff had a down year last year. I think we're all very aware of it. I've always felt that Goff is not as good a quarterback as so much as he's propped up by his head coach, Sean McVay. But that being said, I think Woods is a very good receiver, and he doesn't get a whole lot of red zone targets, which is why people sleep on him. He only got 2 all of last year, so very, very low amount. But kind of like Devin Singletary in that sense, he gets a lot of yardage. But unlike with Singletary with the Bills bringing in Zach Moss, by them getting rid of Brandon Cooks, it opens up the possibility of Woods having more upside to be able to score. And that's what we want. We want players who score. Players who score a lot usually are the highest scoring players, obviously. So I could see another 1,100 yard season for Woods, and I could see a lot of good positive touchdown regression. I could see him pushing a top 15 receiver. I don't know if top 10, just because to be a top 10 receiver is difficult. You usually need almost like a 1,400 yard season and like almost eight touchdowns. I mean, Julio usually only gets 6, but he gets like 15 to 1,600 yards a season. So it's tough. It's really tough to be a top 10 receiver. But I think Woods is a very, very solid, very good number 1 receiver. He will be there for you. He will be healthy. He will play every game. He will consistently score. So I like that. But again, very, very safe. Next pick. Ooh, I like the upside here. So I mentioned this before in Andre's video, but I very much like Michael Gallup. I like Michael Gallup because while everyone really thinks Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper has the name, and Amari Cooper got the 5-year, $100 million contract, which is really only a 2-year, $40 million contract, Michael Gallup was the better receiver last year. Michael Gallup had more red zone targets. Michael Gallup had more targets. Now, did Michael Gallup have as many yards? No. But Michael Gallup looks like he might take over that number 1 job in Dallas because Michael Gallup might be the better player. Now, you need Gallup to be healthy, and he only played, 13 full games last year? But, I mean, he looked like the real deal, and unlike Amari Cooper, who just would disappear for some games, like there's a game where he has 1 reception, a game where he has 2 receptions. Gallup didn't do that. Gallup was relatively, not only was he when he was healthy, he was getting a good amount of target share, and he was getting a good amount of receptions. Usually it seems like teams are trying to stop Amari Cooper, so it leaves Gallup to really soak up a lot of usage. It's kind of like how in the last year with the Steelers, Juju Smith-Schuster had more play, more yards than Antonio Brown. The reason for that is the other teams were covering Brown, but Smith-Schuster looked like the better player. And I kind of feel that way about Michael Gallup. Now, a worry is they have brought in rookie first-round pick CeeDee Lamb, so I think he's going to push for some work as well. But I think Gallup is a solid wide receiver too. I'm hoping for more positive touchdown regression. We won't bet on that just because he got relatively healthy amount last year, but I could see another 1,000-yard season, another 6 touchdowns, and that makes him a top 25, borderline top 20 receiver. So him and Woods are very good picks. I think there's more upside with Gallup than Woods, just because I have more belief in the Cowboys' offense, funny enough, under Mike McCarthy than I do with Jared Goff as the quarterback with the Rams. But I do like the receiver choices after going four running backs in a row. I like that a lot. Both Woods and Gallup were players that I considered, but I went heavy wide receiver early. So, yeah. Next, we have Dak Prescott. Okay. So I know some people are down on Dak Prescott. Personally, Prescott was, He was like the number 3 fantasy quarterback last year. I mean, people don't really realize how good he was, and so getting him in the 7th round. I mean, we had Kyler Murray go before him, and there's a lot of projection on Kyler Murray. I mean, and I love 2nd round quarterback breakouts, but I mean, Mike McCarthy's a new coach in Dallas, and if we believe in Michael Gallup, doubling up on Prescott's not a bad deal. He was 6th among quarterbacks in passing yards with 4,900, passing touchdowns with 30, yards per attempt, roughly 8. And he also had a league-leading 30 drops from his receivers. So he's also a decent runner. He usually runs for about 250 yards. He has a great line. He has great weapons. I think Prescott's going to have another top 5 quarterback season. I'm surprised that a lot of people are sleeping on him. I know a lot of people think, we had this discussion in the chat that, people say, well, Prescott's really mediocre. I think Prescott is an average quarterback, but I think he's propped up by elite weapons everywhere. It's kind of like those Andy Dalton years. He has one of the best offensive lines. He has probably the best receiving core in football, and he has one of the best running backs. Everything is there for him to succeed. It makes it super easy when you have elite talent around you. Ken Dorsey with the Miami Hurricanes back in the early 2000s that went undefeated because they had Andre Johnson and Willis McGahee and just talent everywhere. It's kind of like that on offense for the Cowboys. Plus, they have a super easy schedule. So, am I expecting a close to 5,000-yard passing season? No. I mean, there's got to be some regression somewhere, but I could see like 4,300 yards, maybe a little regression on the touchdowns to 27, but they'll probably win more games. I'm hoping for some of that regression because I want him to give the ball more to Zeke. But I could see him. I don't know if I have him as a top 5 quarterback. I think he's probably around the number 6 fantasy quarterback, but to get him in the 7th round is a good take. That's right on the dot of where he ought to be drafted. So I'm good with that pick. I like Prescott, especially doubling up with Gallup, because I like Gallup quite a bit this year. After that, a bit of a reach. We reached out and grabbed Henry Ruggs III, who was the first wide receiver taken in this year's draft. Again, I'll mention it again as I have in previous videos. I like rookie running backs, second-year quarterback breakouts, a.k.a. Patrick Mahomes MVP season, a.k.a. Lamar Jackson MVP season. And I like third-year receivers, because usually it takes some nuance to learn to be a very good receiver. Chris Godwin last year. So, Ruggs is kind of a bit of a weird case, because he is in Vegas with John Gruden. They're starting 2 rookie receivers now with him and Bryan Edwards, with Tyrell Williams out for the year. And the Raiders obviously have a history with fast receivers. That's why they took Ruggs, who ran a 4.27 40-yard dash, so the fastest in the draft. And I can see Ruggs being a very good player. He's definitely an explosive player. He reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson. Now, is that number 1 receiver skills? I don't know. But I think he's a very, very good player. I obviously think he's the Raiders' number 1 receiver. I just don't really know about the Raiders' offense. I'm not exactly sure how much I trust it. I know that Derek Carr had the highest completion percentage last year in the NFL, but that's also because Derek Carr wasn't throwing it very far. It was like 5.5, 6 yards of reception. That's not... Like, average in the NFL is 7.5 to 8. So he's throwing it 5.5. That's a big, big difference. So I think Ruggs will have some explosive plays. I think he's going to have to learn on the fly. Could there be something there? Absolutely, which is why I like taking rookie receivers. You never know. One might pop, just like Odell Beckham Jr. or, say, last year with Terry McLaurin. And I will say he's on what I consider to be not a great team, and he is the number 1 option, just like McLaurin was last year. I just don't know about how his skill set exactly fits a West Coast offense with John Gruden. So we're thinking 700 yards, maybe 4 touchdowns. So an occasional flex play. But the possibility for more, we will find out relatively shortly. We should know within 4 weeks. But he is the number 1 play. So, yeah, I like upside. After that, Ooh, we took someone on my love list. So Mike Gesicki, the tight end out of Miami. So I am buying the Miami offense this year, despite how bad they were last year. They didn't change too much. I mean, obviously they brought in Jordan Howard and Matt Breida at running back, but Preston Williams is back as the number 2 receiver. They had Devontae Parker, who had a really big breakout once Williams got hurt. We're hoping for that same kind of thing with Devontae. I kind of believe it. But Gesicki was quietly very, very good. He was third in the league in routes run by a tight end, and he had what, the most end zone target? Yeah. So he had like 11 end zone targets. So he was about 8th in the league in end zone targets for a tight end, and he wasn't really doing too much early in the season when they were real terrible. So I know last year he was the number 12 fantasy tight end. But I also think in a Chan Gailey offense, they will be looking for him, and he will get some work, especially because they are hurting at slot receiver with Albert Wilson having opted out for COVID this year. I like Gesicki quite a bit as a receiving tight end. I think he is your starting tight end. That's why we took him in round 9. I think this is a good value for a tight end. I think he's a back end, borderline top 10 tight end, so not super sexy, but super solid. Relatively safe, so kind of like some of your other picks, but I like him. There is the possibility of him being more, and he is on an offense that I think is ascending. So I could see like 650 yards, maybe 5 touchdowns, which for a tight end is good. So I like that. I do like Gesicki quite a bit. After that, we took Mecole Hardman. All right, so we took the number 2 receiver on the Chiefs. We're hoping for a full season from Mahomes. I will say Hardman only played about half the snaps on offense for the Chiefs last year, so I assume we're hoping he kind of overtakes. We're hoping he overtakes Sammy Watkins. I will say, if we're looking for efficiency, Hardman is very interesting in the sense that in 26 receptions, he had 538 yards. So if he has 50 receptions, he's a 1,000-yard receiver. That's wildly efficient. Can he keep that kind of efficiency? I do not know. Also, Sammy Watkins is still there, so that's kind of why it's hard. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Kansas City. Mahomes can do it. But, we got Travis Kelce, we got Tyreek Hill, we got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think Hardman's at least the 4th or 5th option. I possibly might have liked Sammy Watkins just because if he's the 4th option, we're getting him at a much better value. But there is upside with Hardman in case he becomes the 4th option, or even something more. We really just need him to be healthy the whole season. And if Watkins, or I know the other one is Demarcus Robinson, were to get hurt, Hardman would get a lot of play. I just want to see him on the field more. I think he's a very good target for you. I think this was a good pick, especially getting him in round 10. Because, again, the efficiency I just mentioned, that's wildly if you get 26 receptions, 26 got over 500 yards. That's crazy. So if he can even get 50 receptions, I mean, he might have 1,000 yards. So I think we're getting a little bit of touchdown regression just because 6 touchdowns on 26 receptions is a high number. I think we're probably going to get 4, but I do think we'll get some positive regression. I'm expecting Watkins to obviously get hurt at some point and Hardman to be there. Hopefully Mahomes is there the whole year. So I could see him getting getting 45, maybe 50 receptions, not being as efficient, maybe 600, 700 yards, but we shall see. He's a really good dart throw. I like him quite a bit. He's got speed for days, and obviously he's in a great offense. It's just a matter of him getting the opportunity. So we shall see, but I like these back-end dart throws that we're taking because these are really high upside receivers, and we just need one of them to hit. After that, okay, we took a defensive player, Bradley Chubb, the D lineman out of Denver, I want to say. So, I mean, I really like Bradley Chubb, but I'm happy at least we didn't start taking defensive players until the double-digit rounds. So I know some other teams took them a little early, and I don't subscribe to that. I don't like that because defensive players get hurt at a much higher rate of attrition, almost basically like a running back. Only it's all of them. So it's tough for me to really like find that really feasible. But you know, I guess it's okay. We have replaced him since though with Miles Garrett. So I guess that wasn't the best to take a defensive player that high. We took Jabril Peppers next, the safety for the Giants. Wow, he got traded. I mean, you like that Michigan pride, and Jabril Peppers is a safety, and I think I project him to get 100 tackles, so he's worth it. He's probably a top 10 safety. We took Lavonte David, so Sarah's favorite from the Bucks in round 13. I could see him getting another 100 tackle season, just maybe a little regression because Devin White's there the entire time. Who else? We took... All right, so we took a kicker. We took Justin Tucker in the 14th round. I don't like taking kickers before the last round. I'll just say, like, usually it's not a very good idea because it's kind of, you're illustrating that you don't know what's left on the board and you're not taking a chance on it. Case in point, Chase Edmonds went in this round. I'd much rather have Chase Edmonds than a kicker. So 15th round, we took Roquan Smith, so our other linebacker. We really just needed him to be healthy the whole time. I think I drafted him last year, but he ended up on Ryan's team most of the year. So I could see another 100 tackle season, especially for the Bears, especially because Trubisky's the quarterback again. Ugh, bad. No like, not a fan. We took Alan Lazard next. Okay, I like Lazard. All right, so Packers are not doing justice by Aaron Rodgers. They took Devin Funchess to be their number 2 receiver. He opts out for COVID. They drafted and traded up for Jordan Love in the first round. They took A.J. Dillon, another running back, in the second round. And Jay Sternberger, who's a fullback tight end hybrid, in the third round. None of those things I like. None of those things help Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. Who is the guy behind Devontae Adams? We do not know. We are hoping it is the very, very tall Alan Lazard, who is 6'5". He's kind of a monster. He only had 35 receptions last year. He had 477 yards. I know the Packers president, I think it's Ted Thompson, has been talking up Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I don't like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I like Lazard. Lazard is a red zone target. A very big, giant red zone target. But do we know if he's going to be the number 2 receiver? We don't. No one really knows because the Packers are trying to go more run heavy, but somehow give the ball less to Aaron Jones. I don't like Matt LaFleur. I understand he got the team in the NFC Championship game, but they got blown out for a reason. You have Aaron Rodgers. You have Aaron Jones. Just let them do their thing. Like, this isn't hard. You should have gotten a better receiver to be your number 2, but to see if when Lazard is the number 2 from a fantasy perspective is good. Because I think that has a lot of value if we can go back to using Aaron Rodgers as a pass-heavy quarterback, or trying to use like Aaron Jones in the, as I mentioned, aforementioned Le'Veon Bell Pittsburgh role. So we shall see if the Packers actually follow that advice. I doubt it, but I like the pick. So after that, we took another rookie receiver. This time we took Michael Pittman Jr., which is funny because his father actually won a Super Bowl ring with the Bucs. He was the starting running back. So Michael Pittman Jr. is a wide receiver now. Now he is with the Colts. He's really big. He's 6'4", 223. He's got really good hands. He reminds me a lot of Alshon Jeffrey. He's also got a lot of similarities to Courtland Sutton. And I will say that the Colts passing game, I mean, T.Y. Hilton's been a little beat up, and they don't really have anyone behind him. So, again, taking a target on a guy kind of like Lazard with Devontae Adams, McCall Hardman, and Tyreek Hill. We took Michael Pittman Jr. with T.Y. Hilton. I like these because if something were to happen to the guys ahead of them, these guys instantly step into a role where they're the man. And, well, I like Paris Campbell, and I think he's okay, Zach Pascal. I think Michael Pittman Jr. has way more talent. I think he will. He's a dominant possession receiver and a goal line weapon. He's not a speedster. He's not a number one, but he's definitely a high end number two. And with Philip Rivers there, I hope that the Colts at least try and air it out a little bit more than they did with Brissett. For now, I would be, because again, I'm hesitant with rookie receivers, maybe 500 yards. I know they're bringing him on a little bit slowly because they want him to learn the playbook fully, and I get that. But there is the possibility of him becoming something more, and that is why I like taking high upside players late in the draft like this. So I kind of wish more teams did that. So I really like that. I really like the back end picks. Last pick, we've kind of been cycling through. We took Will Dissly, but then we had another player, and now we have like Blake Jarwin. I mean, I had Dissly last year. He's great as long as he's healthy, but I think Greg Olson's cutting into that target share. Jarwin is interesting because he's the number one tight end with Jason Witten gone, and Dak likes to throw it to tight end. However, now they have a high-end 3 receivers who all are competing with like CeeDee Lamb being a first-round pick and Amari Cooper being a $100 million wide receiver and Michael Gallup being probably the best among the 3 with target share, but don't have to hear that from me. So he's just, there's a lot of mouths to feed. If he was in a different offense, I'd probably really like him, but to find out if they feed him more, I like the gamble. I don't mind. I think taking multiple tight ends is good. So, let's wrap this all up in a bow. Obviously, I put this team as the number 4, so I'm high on the team somewhat. I think, obviously, the team is a playoff team. I do think the team has some work to do, but most teams do as well. I think this is more to do with the teams behind you needing a lot more work because I'm not as in love with your team as some of the teams obviously ahead of you and some of the teams behind you. Just like, we'll give an example. Like Ryan right now has no kicker, only 1 linebacker, is carrying 2 safeties, and has 3 tight ends. So, like, obviously, he needs a lot of work on his depth chart. I mean, I like Andre's team, but he has Amari Cooper, and he spent the draft capital to get Cooper, and I like Gallup more. And so I just find issue more with the teams behind you than I do with you. You have less holes on it. But I also felt like early on in the draft, we were kind of just filling the holes. We weren't actually taking players because we liked them. We were just like, oh, this is a hole to fill, and I'm just going to fill this hole. And I don't like that either. I mentioned before the draft, I felt like you and Sarah were getting a little cute, just taking like the 3rd and 4th selections. I think Sarah made it work for her because Sarah's really good at drafting, and it seems to me that she really just like, Patrick was leading on the back end, and Sarah was kind of setting the tone on the front end. I felt like you kind of got a little cute though, like especially with the Murray pick. I mean, if I'm going to use a 4th round pick on Latavius Murray, I'm not taking an Alvin Kamara in the 1st round. Like that's just, there's no way I'm buying an insurance policy that much. It's a high end insurance policy. So I don't know. Again, I like the team overall. I like the back end a lot. I think you'll have a breakout or 2, and probably a breakout. I don't know about 2. 2's a lot. But I could see a breakout, and I could see that guy really contributing. I would just be concerned because there are some worrisome factors. Like, I think J.K. Dobbins could overtake Mark Ingram. I think Zach Moss could possibly take over Devin Singletary, which is pretty surprising for me to say because I do like Singletary, but I just hate the fact that Moss is getting the goal line touches. Like, I don't like that. That makes me very unhappy. So, yeah, I don't know. I actually probably would have taken Zach Moss over Latavius Murray, just in case, because if Singletary or Moss gets hurt, like, that guy's going to go gangbusters. But, I mean, obviously, if Kamara gets hurt, Murray went gangbusters last year, but still, I don't like buying an insurance policy that high, man. That's a lot. But, yeah, overall, I like the team. I think you're a relatively safe team, which is more than I can say for the other teams behind you. I think that obviously your team's a playoff team. I think you do have a lot of work to do. I think it hurt you being next to Sarah because Sarah was just consistently getting a lot of value with almost all of her picks. And I think, at least in the early going, you were still trying to find your footing. So, yeah, just something to consider. I mean, I wasn't going to like your team as much as last year just because, like, last year had, like, so much depth and, like, every year's different. And this year, everyone went relatively running back heavy. But I don't really know about going 4 running backs in the first 4 rounds. Especially because that limits you. You can only carry 6 running backs, so that limits you on the back end of taking, like, high-end running backs. And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a gamble possibly on a rookie running back, because I think you could have a guy who could win you a league like Miles Sanders won Vivian the league last year, rather than someone like Mark Ingram, who I'm just not terribly excited about. But I do like the player that is Cabrera. I do like the player that is Singletary. I think Ingram is a class act, and I think he's a very good veteran. I'm just worried Dobbins takes that role. I think Prescott's one of the better quarterbacks in our league. I think Gesicki's a really good find. All of your defensive players are good, and I really like your bench a lot. Like, I think you just really need one of those guys to pop, and it's really going to make your team like that much better, which is good because I don't like your flex. So overall, yeah, I think your team is relatively safe, and that's why I put them at the 4 spot. I don't really have too many concerns about it. They'll figure it out. But yeah, good draft. Don't love the beginning, but we found our footing. So yeah, there we go.